hardest thing about being a porn star is your dick. Was that an obvious answer?
Humour's a great thing. Humour's a great thing for explaining anything to anyone, because people understand humour. So I've always been interested in how things are constructed, whether it be comedy or movie or anything like that. That's what fascinates me. It's the mechanics of how it comes together to make what people hear or see. And comedy, for me, was exactly the same. It's how do I construct something so that it's delivered in such a way that people will laugh at it, but they will also think, you know, he's got a point in that. People go, oh, you can't say that, you know. But I do. Very dark humour. Very dark humour. Sometimes gets me into trouble. Sometimes gets me banned from places, you know. They tried to, when I was doing my Personality Plus exhibition at the Tate Modern, I was graphic photographs, and they kind of went out on the internet, and all these like American evangelical people were like, "Ooh, Satans," you know. So what, you know? Yeah, well, I've sort of, you know, found myself banged up in a mental health ward again, and it was boring. You know, life was just incredibly boring. And one day I said to Andy, he was a modern matron, that I'd like to bring the camera in. And he was absolutely, oh, you know, you can't bring a camera into a mental health ward and privacy and all. And I said, look, I'm not going to take pictures of patients. I just want to take pictures, you know, because I just need something creative. Anyway, they agreed in the end, providing I didn't take pictures of patients, and that was fine. So I just went out in the grounds and around the place and just sort of took all these random pictures. And then I brought them back, and I think when he could see that I was kind of serious, he said, this is really good. He said, would you mind doing some pictures like for the walls? So I ended up being commissioned. They found some money to enable me just to get these pictures up on the wall. And that, yeah, just sort of kick-started everything. And I sort of, from that, I just slowly sort of got back into photography again. And how Personality Plus came out is because I was at a very high-powered meeting, you know, with like senior government officials from the Department of Health and the Probation Service and the Prison Service and ministers, and I distinctly remember standing up and saying, look, as long as you keep telling people they've got a disorder, they're going to feel that they've got disorder. So it becomes self-defeatist. Whereas if you look at all the creative side of people who have illnesses, all the talent that they have, this is a plus. So if we want to change personality disorder, let's change it into the more positive Personality Plus. And when that 11 million was spent, it was like, well, what do we do next? And I said, well, look, how about we organise some kind of an exhibition? And we had art and pictures and poetry and general sort of writing and installations, and it was just a fabulous one-off day at the Tate Modern in London. I think that in terms of the art, for me, it's about taking people on an emotional roller coaster of experiences they don't necessarily want to be on, the highs and the lows, and it kind of just messes with their heads. And at the end of it, there's a very definite and very positive outcome. So yeah, me on the sofa and taking all the pills, and yeah, the rape scene I did with the girl with the blood and the shower and all the rest of it, that's part of life. And I don't think there's anything wrong in reflecting raw life as it is. Even if there are images that we don't really want to see, we become compelled to see them.
I like that.
I think there's something primal about me. I think there's something sexually primal about me. I think there's quite a lot that's really sort of that goes sort of back to nature again.
If people have issues with porn, it's not the porn that they have actually an issue with, it's themselves and their attitude towards it. their non-acceptance of it. And I've always said this to people, if you think you have a problem with me, it's not the problem with me that's the issue, it's the problem with you. And you need to internalise it and work out what it is that inside of yourself that you need to address yourself. And it's exactly the same with porn. That what you choose to do with your life and your body is no business of anybody else. When you're co-working with a submissive, what you're attempting to do is to enliven the endorphins within her, to enable her to reach a much higher state of pleasure than she would normally reach. To some degree, you are able to switch off your own thoughts and your own feelings, your own ego, and just concentrate on the journey of the sub and what is happening with her. If you're going to take your ego into the job, you're going to make life hard for yourself, because you'll be seen as just being a bloody idiot. How many should you want?
Just the one, cheers.
We get influenced by so many things. We walk outside of our door and subconsciously there are adverts for this and messages for that, and we kind of take all this stuff on board, and our brains are just filled with masses and masses and masses of information all day long. Same with the camera. With your camera, with my camera. We blink at the same rate as a camera lens, 125th of a second. So every time we blink, we're just taking in information all day long. Millions and millions of pieces of information. We have cameras because it helps us to remember the parts that we want to remember. Most of it just subconsciously just disappears. We're here now in the botanical gardens, and I'm not into flowers and I'm not into plants and all the rest of it. But what I do have is a meditative state, a meditative environment around me. The meditative process can take so many different forms and shapes. It's up to the individual as to how they use them, if it's all they choose to use. Because you'll find that on social media now, people spend more time worrying about other people's crap while in denial of their own, because it's kind of an exit strategy. They don't have to think about their own stuff while they're too involved in other people's stuff. That's the kind of bullshit world we live in. Because it just turns into bitching and arguments and stupidity, and everyone feels that they have an opinion, whether it's valid or not. And everything nowadays, it's about feelings. Everything's about how do you feel? Fact doesn't make any difference. I left home. Well, I went out to buy a packet of Rizzlers one day, didn't return for 10 years. So, it would have been a sort of 18. So I suppose my own story of homelessness was one of a voluntary nature. And I drifted really. I drifted here, there and everywhere, all around the country. And it was an adventure in some respects, of never knowing where I was going to be next, never knowing where the next amount of money was going to come from, or the next lot of food was going to come from. If you're able to find it, there is a real sense of spirituality in that journey, because you have to kind of rely on your inner resources and, to a certain extent, living off of your wits. And I'd go into coffee bars and sit next to strippers and have conversations, and coming from a very strict Catholic upbringing, this was wow, this is another world to me. But, it got me into difficulties. It got me into alcohol, and it got me into drugs and all kinds of other stuff, which I don't regret any of it. It's just all a learning opportunities, all a learning curve. I met interesting people, and I ended up once in as a chef, bizarrely, in a gay nightclub in Bournemouth, which then led me to meeting some crazy mad homosexual vicar from Manchester, who said you can come and stay at my place, and I had to lock the door every night, when I got there. But it was somewhere else to go. But I think for anyone nowadays, it's a much, much, much tougher life out there. So what happens is, you get somebody that goes along to housing services, and they're sent along to some other organisation, who then sends them along to some other organisation, and it's just one big revolving door. And people are getting worse and worse and worse. They're getting more depressed, they're taking more alcohol, they're smoking more spice, because they're just not getting anywhere at all. Where the council fails, and I'm sure it's the same with a lot of other councils as well, is they want to subcontract all these services out to different organisations. Again, it kind of goes back to my mayoral campaign, in which, as far as I recall, I was saying that in order to help homeless people, we need to find them employment. So the council would help in that respect, even if it's just gardening or helping to clean up the streets, just giving people a purpose in life, to actually do something to break the monotony of their lives as they exist currently. In Bristol Link, like with other organisations, I was always the one person in the room that would stick my hand up and say, I do it. Yeah. So, yeah, you want to be chair? Oh, yeah, I'll do it, yeah. No one else, oh God, yeah. So I'm suddenly chair of things. Here in Bristol, something dynamic is happening in health and social care. People just like you are having a say in how services should be run and making a change for the better. Why? Because together we have the power to make a difference. And Bristol Link was very much about empowering people who felt they didn't have a voice to actually have a voice and stand up and say things that they'd never otherwise be able to say, and bring attention to much needed services for funding. Sometimes I think, I'm really grateful that I've got this emphysema now, in a sense, that eventually it will kill me and I won't have to put up with the bullshit any longer. The politics and the snowflakes, and it's like enough is enough. I think once you face death a few times, it doesn't bother you, So like, I couldn't care less, if I die tomorrow, it wouldn't bother me. I'm not bothered by it, I'm not afraid of it. Again, I don't give a shit. So yeah, there is a certain fascination with me, or within me, about death and what's on the other side of it. Because we don't know. It could be something really, it could be nothing at all. It could be something like really interesting. There's a flip side to everything. I see stuff as being a positive or a negative. For me, personality disorder, I think, allows me to go sort of sometimes to places and do things that other people just couldn't touch with a barge pole. It's like fear of doing this or fear of doing that. Where personality disorder just kind of opens the mind to all kinds of possibilities if somebody allows it to. And I realise that in this great world around me, I'm quite different. I'm the round peg that's trying to fit into the square hole in many ways. I don't want to fit in. I don't want to be one of the lemmings, sort of jumps off the precipice. I don't want to be one of the sheep in society. But through everything, despite everything I've been through, despite all the homelessness, the addictions, the brutality, everything, I am so grateful that I did it. And I wouldn't have missed it for the world. None of it. Because I know full well that without all of that stuff going on in my life, I would not be the person I am now. It's been an education.